They just had their fun at home, but now the season is really here. The Grizzlies begin their road sketch with two games against division rivals today and tomorrow. We're going to break down both of those games in the upcoming stretch right here, right now, coming up on Locked on Grizzlies.
You are Locked on Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Locked on Grizzlies. I am your host for today, Damichael Cole, beat writer here at the Commercial Appeal in Memphis, Tennessee. Once again, want to thank you for joining in with me on Locked on Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to like, comment, subscribe to all our videos, all our contents, and leave reviews as well, whether that's on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you want to leave reviews, wherever you want to tune in, we appreciate you. So thank you for tuning in. Continue to tune in and let us know how we can continue to make the show better. And we will try to do just that for you. But the Grizzlies 1-0 now and picked up their first win at home against the New York Knicks. So got off to a great start this season. All things considered, an up and down game. They almost blew a 19-point lead, but in those type of situations, a win is a win. You rather just come out with the win, no matter how ugly, no matter how pretty. The Grizzlies did come out 115 to 112. But today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. Remember, BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now, next up for the Grizzlies, two games against Southwest Division rival foes. First up against the Houston Rockets, and then Saturday they'll travel over to Dallas. So a back-to-back. And I've talked about this before. The Grizzlies starting the season with 3 games in 4 days. So an interesting stretch here, to get the Grizzlies going. But before we get into those games, we got to start with what you probably want to know more than anything, and that's some player updates. We'll start off with Dillon Brooks. Dillon Brooks is still listed as doubtful going into this game tonight against the Houston Rockets. And here's the thing with Dillon Brooks' situation that I know. Dillon Brooks is dealing with left thigh soreness, and all things considered, he isn't in the worst position right now. I think it's more of the fact that Dillon Brooks, it's 3 games in 4 days that I just mentioned, and this is going to be the same with Zaire Williams as well. With the 3 games in 4 days, you kind of want to bring these guys along slowly, thinking about the long game, right? If it was the playoffs, would Dillon Brooks play? I think so. I think he'd be available if this was a postseason game. But it's the fact that, hey, it's only game number 2 out of 82. And all things considered, John Conchar stepped in and did a pretty good job in that last game, knocked down 4 3-pointers and, had a double-double, 12 points, 11 rebounds. So you're not in the worst shape there, without Dillon Brooks. And he played sound defense as well. Shout out to John Conchar holding R.J. Barrett to 3 of 18 shooting as his primary defender for most of that game against the Knicks. So there's Dillon Brooks. Zaire Williams, pretty much the same situation, but a little bit different. I think Zaire Williams, if you were saying, which situation is a little more concerning, I think the Zaire Williams situation is, we talked in the past about how leading up to the season, he wasn't practicing much. Then he came back the last 2 practices. I think I saw him on Saturday, and then I saw him on Monday, if I'm not mistaken. It was Sunday and Monday or Saturday and Monday, one of the others. But Zaire Williams did participate in 2 practices, but in each of those practices, very little work. Didn't do too much, off to the side from the team. He was also dealing with a non-COVID illness on top of, the knee soreness that he's dealing with. So you had a non-COVID illness where Taylor Jenkins talked about the need to have to ramp him back up because he only played in 2 preseason games, plus dealing with a non-COVID, illness that probably, affected, his conditioning and things like that, plus the knee soreness. So they got a day-to-day approach with Zaire Williams, but he's listed as out on the injury report, so he's not going to play in this game. And I'll just say now, I doubt we see him on this mini road road trip. The possibility of Zaire Williams returning is more likely, going into some point next week. The Grizzlies will play Monday at home against the Brooklyn Nets. Then you got 2 days off. Those 2 days off are going to be really big for this team. But you get 2 days off after that, Tuesday and Wednesday, before going back on the road. So that's Zaire Williams. And then lastly, this player won't be available for a little while, and that's Danny Green. But I did have, a recent exclusive one-on-one conversation with Danny Green, and the conversation mainly centered around the fact that he just got this big news. He's going to be with ESPN. He's going to do a 15 episode deal. I think it is a 15 episode deal. I said I think it is, like I'm not the one who came out with the news. But anyways, Danny Green is going to be a part-time analyst, and in that role, he agreed to a 15 TV show appearance with ESPN. So in that role, we're going to see Danny Green more on ESPN, kind of similar to what Draymond Green did with TNT last season, right? You would see Draymond Green kind of still be, at the Warriors facility, but he'd have, the camera set up, and he would call in, video into TNT and give his analysis on things going on in the NBA. What I thought was interesting was, not Dylan Brooks, Danny Green, when we were talking, he kind of mentioned the fact that, rehab is still priority. Just in case anyone, I saw a couple comments, people were saying, oh, this is another Andre. I can guarantee you it's not. Danny Green is bought in to the Memphis Grizzlies, and I'm going to tell you how I know that. He made it clear. Rehab is number one. He made it clear he's going to be around this team. And another thing, the Grizzlies, the front office, the players, they all want him around. Of course, the championship experience, right? 3 NBA titles. He's another opinion that's respected in the room. One of the first things Danny Green said at Media Day was, maybe a little less social media for this team, a little less Twitter, a little less of the, back and forth with trolls and things on Twitter. And, John Morant was asked about that, like shortly after, and he paraphrased, and he basically said, look, I'm not going against, what it is. Danny Green, he has championship success. If that's what he thinks, basically, he's open to it. So Danny Green, from that moment, I realized, and you should know that he is well respected in the Grizzlies locker room, in the Grizzlies organization. They value him. And that's why, even with this opportunity with ESPN, he's going to be around a lot, and he's working hard to get back. And that, just from the conversation I had with him, I feel like there's a really good chance. Now, at first it was kind of sketchy if Danny Green will return in time, to impact this team on the floor. We know what he's going to do off the floor, but on the floor, now I'm confident in saying that there is a good chance that you can expect to see Danny Green this season. He's rehabbing really hard. He puts in a lot of hours to rehab each day, and he's already, in practice, he's doing small things, not a lot of lateral movement and those quick twitch drills that players are doing, but he's doing the free throw shooting drills. He's spot up 3-point shooting, in groups and things like that. So encouraging thing, I think, from Danny Green. And, one funny thing that I got out of him, being in the part-time analyst role on ESPN is the fact that, he's going to give his commentary, and sometimes that's going to, be about those rival Grizzlies opponents and things like that. So keep that in mind too. If Danny Green says, oh, this team isn't playing that well, and that team comes against the Grizzlies a couple of days later, shooting with their hair on fire, or at least, just looking more motivated, you got to keep those things in mind. But all in all, Danny Green, congratulations to him for getting an opportunity at ESPN. It sounds like he will be back this season. So I think you can start to formulate a picture of Danny Green being one of those players possibly in a playoff rotation or in that rotation down the stretch for the Grizzlies, and him being a shooter, which is something I've talked about this Grizzlies team will need. But that'll be a big key, right? The Grizzlies shooting. That's a big key to this team going forward. And speaking of keys, I'm going to talk to you about their keys to the weekend in these upcoming games against the Rockets and the Mavs. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about Bet Online. See, you already know that Bet Online is where the games start, and Bet Online has you covered with the best props each and every game has available, and it's through all sports, right? It's your number one for football, number one for basketball, number one for boxing, MLB, MMA, golf. Wherever you go, Bet Online has you covered. So head over to the website. You can go over to betonline.net or just use your mobile device to learn more. And remember, BetOnline is going to continue to have you covered with sports wagering information. Even if you're not the biggest bettor in the world, you can go over to BetOnline just to get an idea for who is expected to play well, who is expected to not do so well, who's expected to shoot the more three-pointers, and everything in between. So just remember, before the game actually tips off, BetOnline is where the game starts. Keys to the game in these next two games. We talked about it. First, Rockets, going back to last season. Houston Rockets, when I came on the beat, I remember that game in March, right? Early March, and they kind of caught a sleeping Grizzlies team. Caught them sleeping. Caught the Grizzlies sleeping. Jalen Green played well. Kevin Porter Jr. played well. And they beat the Grizzlies, kind of, surprised some people with that win. Ja Morant didn't play in that game, but again, the Grizzlies were playing great basketball without Morant at that time. So this isn't a team to sleep on. And before I even get to, the biggest keys to just this particular game, I want to talk about the keys to the weekend overall, because I think this Rockets and this Mavs game, the reason I'm not going to talk too much about them separately, because I don't think there are going to be too many separate takeaways. Let me explain. The Grizzlies in this first game of the season, right? This is what we saw. Desmond Bane, 37 minutes, 29 seconds. So basically 37 and a half minutes. Santi Aldama, 39 minutes. Steven Adams, 32 minutes. John Conchar, 33 minutes. Ja Morant, 38 minutes. Tyus Jones, 25 minutes. And then everyone off the bench, Brandon Clark, 19 minutes, 13 for Roddy, 16 for Xavier Tillman, and 12 and a half for Jake LaRavia. But my point there is these dudes might be tired. Not just in this game against the Rockets, but tomorrow against the Dallas Mavericks. This is what the Grizzlies schedule looks like. And this isn't to make any excuses. All NBA teams go through this at the beginning of the season. If you look at their schedules, a lot of teams are playing back-to-backs in this first week. But we're talking specifically why, results-wise, the numbers may not reflect exactly what a fresh, energetic Grizzlies team would be capable of doing. So here's the thing. This is what the Grizzlies schedule looks like. Played Wednesday night, played an overtime game Wednesday night. And we just mentioned the minutes for the starters in that game. Every starter played over 32 minutes. Ja Morant was visibly, he even said it himself after the game, was very tired. Went home, got some rest really quick after his presser, post-game presser, that is. And so they play late game Wednesday night, fly to Houston on Thursday. Now they play Friday. Then they'll play Saturday. Then they'll fly Sunday. Then they'll play Monday. So until Tuesday and Wednesday, they won't get much downtime. And, you wonder how that's going to reflect things like shooting. We saw at times when the Grizzlies lost on back-to-backs last season, I would always ask them, did the back-to-back have anything to do with the shooting performance? And a lot of times, guys would basically say, look, we don't want to make excuses, but the reality of it is when you're on those back-to-backs, your legs are a little more tired, which are going to lead to shorter shots. So one thing to look for as a fan, as someone watching the game, if you see the Grizzlies early on, and maybe not even early on, in the third quarter, early in the fourth quarter, you see a lot of shots hitting the front of the rim, bouncing off the side of the rim, it's probably going to be a sign of concern or a sign of the team that needs to get to the rim. That's why my first key is depth. It's depth. We saw the Grizzlies go 10 deep. And as I mentioned earlier when we talked about the availability, Dillon Brooks won't be available for this first game, against the Rockets, and Zaire Williams is unlikely to be available throughout this entire weekend. So depth is going to be more of a concern because wing depth, now you're short. One thing I expect to see more of, and we saw some of it, is those Tyus Jones, Ja Morant lineups. That was, statistically speaking, one of the best lineups, in this past game. And those two played well off each other to the tune of Tyus Jones knocking down the game-winning shot against the Knicks. And we see Tyus Jones at times, I talk about why that lineup's so important. Tyus Jones takes pressure off of Ja Morant. You got to think about it like this. When Ja Morant's bringing the basketball up the court over and over and over and over and over, takes a little toll on you. It doesn't look like much watching a basketball player just dribble the basketball up the court. But if you have a defender who's, picking you up 80 feet or 75 feet away from the basket, it takes a toll. So it's good to have Tyus Jones in the game every now and then and say, here, you bring the basketball up the court. While I go up the court, I get a little rest on offense, and I'll get involved in the actions and things like that. But depth, you're going to need more bench players to step up. If you looked at the starters from this past game against the Knicks, Santi Aldama was plus 18. Desmond Bane, yes, he shot 6 of 22, 3 of 13 from three-point range, dealt with the cramps in that game. But Desmond Bane was plus 16. You know why? Because he had 6 assists overall, and he made 3 3-pointers. So made some big shots, and he also had 6 assists. So plus 13 for Desmond Bane, John Conchar plus 6. Steven Adams was -1, Ja Morant was +1, but we saw Ja Morant close the game late in the fourth, and his big plays in overtime as well. But the bench, Brandon Clark was -12 in his time on the floor. Tyus Jones was -4. David Roddy was -5. Xavier Tillman was +1. And Jake LaRavia was -2. So 4 of your 5 bench players were negatives. That's where things will have to change. We talked about the depth. This is where the Grizzlies' depth comes into play. We talk all offseason about, they have this guy, they have that guy. We don't even know which 10 players are going to be on the floor because they have so many options. Well, Xavier Tillman, I thought, in his 16 minutes, he was a monster on the glass. They're going to need him to continue to rebound that way, to continue to get that impact that he did in that time. You're going to need more from David Roddy, 0 of 6 shooting. I thought he was sound defensively, but you're going to need more from him, offensively speaking. Tyus Jones told me before the game, I'm going to be more aggressive with my shot with the fact that Zaire Williams is out. So you could expect to see Tyus Jones to continue to be aggressive. 6 of 16 shooting for Tyus Jones. I thought that was a good sign. He took the third most shots behind Ja Morant and Desmond Bane. And quite frankly, that should be the case right now. He should be one of those guys taking the most shots with this Grizzlies team. But it's all going to come down to the depth. Brandon Clark, I thought, the contract extension kind of clouded some of this, but to me, he did not have the greatest preseason. He looked like the same exact player from last season. You want to see something different. We saw in this first game, Brandon Clark did take 3-pointers, right? 0 of 2 on 3-pointers. Quite frankly, neither one of them looked good, but this was one of the first things I talked about after last season. Brandon Clark, I actually asked him at the end of last season, and he said 3-point shooting was near the top of his list of things he wanted to work on. You looked at those 3-point shots he took in the game, and it's like, I don't want to see Brandon Clark shooting threes again. But can't tell you, in practice, he's made some of those. So bear with him. He may be able to make a couple of those going down the stretch. But Brandon Clark did not have a good start, 4 fouls as well. So you want to see more out of what you're, quite frankly, expecting to be one of your best players off the bench. But you just need the depth to come through because you just can't depend on those first 5, Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, John Conchar, Santi Aldama, and Steven Adams, just to have, really big nights. And another key to this game, and I won't harp on this one for long because we know the deal at the end of the day, and it's Desmond Bane shooting. Talked in the preseason a lot how Desmond Bane was struggling finding his shot. And in his first game, shot 6 of 22 overall, 3 of 13 from 3-point range, missed some pull-ups, missed some open shots that we're used to seeing Desmond Bane make. Overall, he still impacted the game. I mentioned the 6 assists, but you're going to need his shooting to improve. Why? Because the Grizzlies had Ja Morant make 3 3-pointers, John Conchar make 4, Santi Aldama made 3 3-pointers, Tyus Jones made 3 3-pointers. That's 4 guys outside of Desmond Bane, 5 total, including Desmond Bane. 4 other guys made 3 3-pointers on the Grizzlies. I don't know how many more times that's going to happen. The Grizzlies took 50 3-point attempts in their first game of the season. You know how many times the Grizzlies took 50 3-pointers last season? one time, and it was early on in the season, so this was not something that was normal of this Grizzlies team. But you know what? Taylor Jenkins talked about the Grizzlies emphasizing more three-point shooting and emphasizing getting to the basketball. So we saw a lot of those two things. And you want to see Desmond Bane be more accurate from the three-point line, because I'm imagining on the second night of a back-to-back, you're going against the Dallas Mavs and Luka Doncic. They're going to shoot a lot of three-pointers. Luka's going to put the pressure on you. And you're going to want to see someone be able to knock down some shots. We saw the Grizzlies have some ugly shooting days on the second nights of back-to-backs last season. And Desmond Bane's shooting is going to be a real big key to, getting out of those situations. Last point I want to harp on here is just identifying the next best perimeter defender. No Dillon Brooks. No Zaire Williams. Who's going to be the guy? We saw John Conchar. I thought he was locked into that matchup against RJ Barrett, caused some turnovers there. He was sound. RJ Barrett wasn't getting open. And, I like what John Conchar brings to the table. And quite frankly, Taylor Jenkins loves his defense as well. So you got that. Yeah, John Conchar. How about John Morant, right? I don't want to say I told you just yet. I'll wait till 20, 30, 40, maybe even 50 games down the stretch before I do my whole I told you parade. But did you see how good he looked defensively? At times in that first game. I'll say at times because, we did see Jalen Brunson get it going late in that fourth quarter. But through three quarters, Jalen Brunson was struggling. John Morant was a big reason why. Did you see the chase down block that he had? One of the better blocks we've seen John Morant have. And he didn't even have a steal in that game. So, there's still many more plays to be made for John Morant on the defensive end. But overall, again, encouraging from him as well. Desmond Bane, you want to see what he's going to be able to do. But I think Jake LaRavia, in the little time that he played on the court, he was the 10th man, in that game. He was the last one in against the Knicks. So some really good defensive potential. He had a really big steal there late in the fourth quarter. But the question is, who's going to be that next guy? Why? Because you're about to play Kevin Porter Jr., who can score, who can create his shot. Jalen Green is going to average 20 points per game in this NBA real soon. And then Luka. What's understood doesn't even need to be explained with Luka Doncic on tomorrow. We've seen Zaire Williams get a shot at him. We've seen Dillon Brooks guard him. Desmond Bane has the size, but those first two guys aren't available. I think after this weekend, we should either know who the next best defender is or have a clue of which guys are capable of stepping up in those matchups. And we talked about, these players, what we want to see as a team. Now we're going to go individually with each player. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about game to game, because first of all, you need to make Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. But for your second listen, why not game to game? Because every moment, every top performance, every result, Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the league with local analysis that only Locked On can deliver. So all you have to do is follow Game to Game on Locked On Game to Game, available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. And the Grizzlies, have a 10-man rotation that they stick with. They're very firm in that. Taylor Jenkins, I actually asked him before that last game, did you consider going down to 9? And he said yes. Him and the staff did. They considered a 9-man rotation because when you look at the fact that without Dillon Brooks and Zaire Williams, you're likely playing two rookies, Jake LaRavia and David Roddy, who, just to be honest here, neither is ready to make the type of impact that, a lot of people probably want to see. But neither was Zaire Williams last season at this point, or Santi Aldama. So, again, that's expected. Those guys aren't ready to make that type of impact. Factor that in. Xavier Tillman, great game, I thought, against the Knicks, crashing the glass, just being forceful. That's the word Taylor Jenkins likes to use when he describes Xavier Tillman Sr. But, he's limited. You're not going to get too much offensively there. And that impacts the bench scoring. That's why, Cam Reddish almost single-handedly outscored the Grizzlies bench. And that's why, just the Grizzlies are, with this current group that they have, they're going to lose, the bench scoring battle on a lot of nights. So we're not gonna linger on with the obvious here. When you're playing against the Houston Rockets, the biggest keys are slowing down their dynamic backcourt, right? You got to slow down Kevin Porter Jr. He's a crafty dribbler. He, in a way, has some of those, the nifty footwork of a James Harden, left-handed guy, likes to get to the rim as well, but likes to shoot the three-pointer. And then Jalen Green, explosive, creative. When he's hot, he has some big games. Don't believe me? Go look at some Jalen Green highlights and go check out. I remember it was a game against the Los Angeles Lakers where he quite frankly just took over. And I mentioned he had a good game against the Grizzlies last season, so you might just remember that one. But dynamic backcourt, then they have, the number 3 overall pick, out of the draft this past season. And they have Alperen Sengun, who I think is a nice young big man as well. But, yeah, going back to their number 3 overall pick, Jabari Smith, a forward, can shoot, can create. He had 17 points in his debut, and a lot of people expected him to be the number 1 overall pick. So a lot of talent on that team, not to mention Eric Gordon, who we've come familiar with seeing over the course of the years. Really good shooter, creator, and just really good basketball player as a guard/forward on that team. The Rockets have a lot of talent. So do the Dallas Mavericks. Saw the Dallas Mavs a lot against the Suns in that first game, and Christian Wood seems to be a really good addition for them. To help out Luka, help out the scoring. I think he made 4 3-pointers, scored 16 consecutive for the Mavs at one point. And when Christian Wood's in the game, I think the Grizzlies are better prepared to defend him than most teams. Why? Because they have Brandon Clark. Christian Wood is the type of guy, he plays the 5 a lot, but you put him against those bigger, slower 5-men, he's going to toast them a lot of times. That's one of his biggest advantages. But he's a slimmer guy. In the Grizzlies, again, you ask Taylor Jenkins what he loves about Brandon Clark. I guarantee you one of the first things that will come out of his mouth is the versatility, because of the defensive versatility, the ability to guard 3s, 4s, 5s, even hold his own against guards. But he's going to match up really well against Christian Wood. So I mentioned how Brandon Clark struggled in that first game. I'm expecting him to kind of bounce back in one of, if not both of these games on the road against the Rockets and the Mavs. So I just mentioned what I want to see from Brandon Clark. What about the rest of the players? I'm going to go down the entire list of the rotation players expected to play. So not Dillon Brooks, not Zaire Williams, not Junior Lofton. I know everyone's asking about Junior Lofton. Trust me, we will talk more about Junior Lofton going forward, because you can expect to see him play. Might not be with the Grizzlies, but he's going to be playing some minutes, even if it's down there in South Haven with the G League hustle. But Vince Williams and Kennedy Chandler as well. We're not going to talk about those guys and what we want to see from each player. Just the 10 rotation guys that we're expecting. Start with Ja Morant. And at the end of the day, you want Ja Morant to dominate this first game. This Rockets team, as good as that young talent is, defensively they struggle. They have athletes, but Ja Morant is more than capable of getting to the rim. I mentioned earlier that, they don't have the most athletic big men in the NBA, which, is a recipe for disaster when you're going against Ja Morant, because you need guys, like a Mitchell Robinson. Even though Ja Morant went into the chest of that 7-foot shot blocker, that plays with the Knicks, you need a guy like that to slow him down. But I'm expecting Ja Morant to have a big game in that one. And then just to continue to put the pressure on the Mavs, Luka versus Ja. It's the battle everyone's going to want to see. It's going to be on NBA TV, so it's going to be a bigger audience is watching it as well. Desmond Bane, I mentioned it already, shooting. You want to see the shooting. The playmaking, I think, is improving. 6 assists in that first game. Defensively, he's going to have to be locked in as well. He's going to have to guard either Kevin Porter Jr. or Jalen Green. Then he's going to have to turn around and, chase one of these shooters, a Reggie Bullock, a Tim Hardaway, a Dorian Finney-Smith, or he's going to be tasked with guarding Luka Doncic. So some really good matchups to really test out, Desmond Bane's two-way ability there. Steven Adams should dominate the glass in both of these games. The Rockets, not a real good rebounding team, and the Mavs aren't either. So these are games where if you're saying, oh, how should Steven Adams make his impact? He should dominate the glass, and that's where it comes into the fact, even if the Grizzlies miss some shots in either of these games, you have Steven Adams there to collect some offensive rebounds And he went against Mitchell Robinson, who for Steven Adams himself even said, hey, you can make an argument he's the best offensive rebounder in the game, even over himself. But you know what Steven Adams did? 6 offensive rebounds, 14 total against Mitchell Robinson. So I'm expecting, similar outputs against the Rockets, against the Mavs. Brandon Clark, mentioned him already. His defensive versatility will shine against this team. The Rockets have, a big man who I think is a very talented scorer in Sagoon, and he has some nifty, crafty footwork. You need a guy who can stay with him when he dribbles the basketball, because he likes to dribble, does pump fakes around the rim. I think someone like Brandon Clark, his skill set, his ability to move left to right, his agility, plus the jumping ability, he is best suited to guard that type of guy. We mentioned how he's going to be best suited to guard Christian Wood. Expect a big weekend from Brandon Clark. If not offensively, definitely defensively. He matches up really well against these two teams. John Conchar, what was the theme this summer? Remember, it was shooting, right? This is a guy who only shot 1.8 3-pointers during last season. And he said the Grizzlies want him to shoot more. I've said it again, Taylor Jenkins is saying, let the ball fly. That's their mantra around here with the Grizzlies. Get those shots up, let it ride. And you know what John Conchar did in the first game? 9 3-point attempts from John Conchar, knocked down 4. So again, the efficiency, the accuracy is still there from him, but you don't want that to stop now. You want that to continue, because you know what you're going to get automatically from him? You're going to get sound defense. You're going to get the rebound. Now, how about 11 boards from John Conchar? I didn't mention that yet. 3 offensive rebounds, just watching him in the game. I watch John Conchar very closely, because quite frankly, you don't see a lot of guards crashing the glass like John Conchar. He'll be over there by the 3-point line on the wing. He'll see the ball go up. First of all, he has a very good IQ. If you see the ball is going up in one of the corners, basketball 101 is you go to the other side of the basket, because the ball is expected to go over on the other side. And then you see, the typical rebounders, Steven Adams and the other big man jogging in for position, on the other side of the board. And then here comes John Conchar, just like sneaking his way in there like a little mouse or something, just crawling, and he just grabs the boards, he tips them out. There were a couple he didn't even grab against the Knicks that he just extended plays. And you want to see more of that, but you want to see him continue to shoot the basketball well. I thought John Conchar going into the starting lineup, I didn't expect a big drop-off, from Dillon Brooks and John Conchar on the offensive end. I talked about this because John Conchar is going to play his role. He's not going to play out of the means of the offense. He's going to take 3-point shots. I mean, he took 9 3-pointers in that first game. He took 11 shots total. He's in to shoot. And as long as he's making them, there's going to be space for Ja Morant. Desmond Bane doesn't even have to make them. No one's going to purposely leave Desmond Bane open. That's on the scouting report to guard him. So you add another shooter. Santi Aldama shooting the basketball well. So all things considered, you just want him to continue to be accurate if the Grizzlies are at their best. David Roddy, interesting case here. He got the first call between the rookies, between Jake LaRavia. David Roddy played the more minutes. I've spent a lot of time talking with David Roddy, before these games and listening to him talk about his preparation and, just how he's learning the game. Feels comfortable. He feels, like he's getting closer. He actually, you can see plays where he's a step slower. You remember against the Knicks, there was the inbound pass. He catches it, looks like he was wide open when he caught it, wide open under the basket, and he goes up, and Cam Reddish comes out of nowhere, blocks the ball, knocks it out of bounds. David Roddy gets blocked. He ended up shooting 0 for 6. But in that situation, if the game was slower, again, rookie moment, if the game was slower for David Roddy, he notices, Cam Reddish is coming. He's 6'8", 6'9", but I'm bigger, I'm stronger. What did Brevin Knight and Pete Pranica call him? They call him Roddy the Body, right? And so use that frame. He should have, when he grabbed that ball, take one dribble, power dribble, use that frame to knock Cam Reddish back as fast as Cam Reddish was coming. He was going to get knocked back, running to that brick wall. Knock him back, lay it in, easy 2 points, or he gets fouled. So It's situations like that that will come to David Roddy in time. You want to see the progression. You want to see how the game slows down for him on the offensive end. Defensively, not really too worried about David Roddy or Jake LaRavia for that matter. Tyus Jones, he's got to continue to be that aggressive player on offense. I just mentioned 16 shots. Tyus Jones should be finishing third, fourth in shot attempts. The only other player I can make an argument that should be getting, if someone else gets more shots than him, should be Santi Aldama. You want Brandon Clark to get his fair share of shots as well, but how many minutes will those come in is the question. The thing is, you want to see Tyus Jones, the floater, the three-point shot. Keep an eye on this as well. Tyus Jones has this pull-up three-point shot. Saw it in spurts last season. He hit a real big one against the Timberwolves in the playoffs. Pull-up three-point. He'll just pull up in transition. And I'll say this. We talked a lot about Desmond Bane and his pull-up three-pointer. Tyus Jones has one of the better pull-up three-pointers on this team as well. So keep an eye on that. That's how he gets a lot of his offense. But you just want to see him continue to put the pressure on these teams. And then Jake LaRavia. Again, I mentioned with Jake LaRavia, it's all about the defense. It's all about defense. You want him to continue to be there, defensively. You want him to continue to impact the game there. 6'7", long arms, big frame. You're going against a lot of really good guards. I mentioned Luka Doncic is in this game a couple nights from now. And then you're going to go against Jalen Green. You go against Eric Gordon. You go against Kevin Porter. Well, guess what? Jake LaRavia is going to get some of those matchups. So you want to see him just continue to show the defensive versatility and just knock down those key shots. Xavier Tillman, all he has to do is just control the glass. Just control the glass. Xavier Tillman in that lineup with Brandon Clark, you're going to see there's going to be some clunkiness there from time to time, and that's where the problem comes in with playing those two together. The stats, show that if you put those two on the floor together, one of them is going to have to, be more of the floor spacer, and quite frankly, both of them have shown they can shoot the three-pointers in games before, and I saw it in practice, but, you want to see it this season. Haven't seen it from either one of them, so you just got to see how that, duo kind of materializes as a front court. I'm not too high on it, but again, one thing I'm high on is Xavier Tillman's ability to control the glass. He continues to do that. He'll continue to carve out a role, and he'll continue to be impactful like he was against the Knicks. Lastly, but certainly not the least important here, is Santi Aldama. Santi Aldama, I put him last because he's the most interesting case, right? 18 points, 11 rebounds. Wow, he set a high standard for himself. But remember, Santi Aldama, he shot 3 of 8 from three-point range, and he'll tell you himself, look, he might not, every game's not going to be that clean for him. We saw the defensive mistake late in the fourth quarter that allowed Cam Reddish to tie the game on the three-pointer. So you got to have moments like that with Santi Aldama. But overall, all things considered, Santi Aldama, you just want him to continue to impact the game in more ways than one. The 11 boards, the altering the shots, the way he altered shots in that game was very impressive. Only had one block. You look at the stat sheet, you see one block. Oh, yeah, he's no Jaren Jackson Jr. No, he's not Jaren Jackson Jr. when it comes to shot blocking. But you know what Santi Aldama can do? He can put his hands up, and guys will not see the rim. He's 7 feet. He has long arms. And we saw time and time again, a guy like R.J. Barrett puts a lot of pressure going to the rim. He couldn't finish around him. And a lot of their players, the Knicks players, couldn't finish around him. Even Julius Randle at times, even with his bigger frame, had trouble finishing around him. So with Santi Aldama, you want to see him impact the game defensively, even if the shots aren't falling at the same level. If you get that, I think you're fine with his performance. But he's not scared to shoot the basketball. He's playing with insane, uber confidence right now. And at the end of the day, that makes sense. So this 2-game stretch against these two teams, against the Rockets, against the Mavs overall, no matter how good or bad the Grizzlies play, you can't get too high or too low on these 2 games because it's early in the season. The Grizzlies are still getting their conditioning back. And even if they come out looking like some rejuvenated group against the Rockets, the chances that they do it 2 nights in a row aren't the best. But, that's what defense is for, right? You can still, play well on the defensive end, and it's going to be interesting to see how this perimeter defense holds up, arguably without two of their best options in Zaire Williams and Dylan Brooks, who you can make an argument is one of the better wing defenders in the NBA. So a lot of options, to consider there for the Grizzlies. And quite frankly, I think, that's where we'll learn more this weekend. We'll learn more about the defense. We'll learn more about Santi Aldama's consistency. And we'll learn more about, this bench, the depth of this team. And after this weekend's over, we'll start next week. Coming on Monday, our first episode is going to recap these two games, recap what we saw from the weekend. I'm sure we'll talk to players, coaches. I'll give you some updates as well coming on that side of things. And then we'll preview a game against the Brooklyn Nets as the Grizzlies return home on Monday. Thank you for making Locked On Grizzlies your first listen every day. Now go on and make your second listen Locked On NBA. The NBA season is here, and our local NBA experts and insiders have you covered on and off the court all season long. Remember, it's all the biggest stories, Monday through Friday, in less than 30 minutes. I always tell you, the thing about Locked On NBA, Grizzlies fan, guess what? The Grizzlies are one of the better teams in the league right now, so you should always tune into Locked On NBA. You want to see what's going on with the competition. You want to see how the Warriors, those chemistry things are working out over there, because that's going to be, it's kind of a little button rivalry going on there. We talked about the Dallas Mavericks. That's the inner division rivalry. And we talked about all these teams, even in the Eastern Conference. What's going on in the East over there? Locked On NBA is where you go to get covered on all those things. It's available on YouTube, Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. But thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Appreciate you for tuning in, and I'll see you on next week. Once again, I'm Damichael Cole, beat writer of the Commercial Appeal. Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies.